Hello. I chose that exact moment to take a sip of water just as I went live. Isn't it just the way of the world? So I'm just going to make sure that I'm live. And the way I'm going to do that is by attempting to see if I can join the channel. Oh, wrong button. Okay, it says that I am live. Excellent. So I've just been trying to set up a few things here. Let's move myself over again. Let's move a little LeVar over again. And I can make this window a bit bigger now. It's still a work in progress. I'm going to put what my chat commands are under my head down here. Once I can figure out how to get my bot working. Oh, wait, it says the bot is running. So let's test that by doing this. Excellent. Oh, and it put the link as a separate chat message. But it is a clickable link, so that's good. Okay, so the chat bot is working. So I will be putting up, like I said, under my face here, what those chat commands are, and then I'm gonna have to come up with some as I go along because I'm doing this on a clean account, so it doesn't have what my chat commands were back when I was using Twitch, because I'm not using Twitch anymore. I'm just using YouTube. So right now I only have, I think, 3 chat commands, which are, and I should have them open here so I can always know what they are. Just writing contest, which is the one I just did. Schedule, so you know what my schedule is, or my live streaming schedule. And then social, so you can easily be able to click on my social media, which is either Twitter or Instagram. Let me open this up. So what we're going to do today is a little brainstorming. Hopefully by the end of next week, Friday, I will have a completed outline, so that I can then start working on the actual short story itself. So, but before I do that, I want to have a fresh new idea, because I have so many stories that I've written in, the last, you could say, 5 years. But I want to start fresh. I don't want to pull from the past forward. I want to kind of have something new to work from. So we're going to do research. We're going to work on this research section here, ignoring the draft section. And let's just add a page here. And this will just be title ideas. I always start with a title, so in case you're wondering, that's the way I work. The title gives me the story, and then the story gives me the characters. And so that's just always been my process. I'm just changing the layout because I want to I want to see the page. Why am I not seeing the option for that? I know it's here. Alright, show ruler, but where the heck is... Oh, here we go, show page view. Oh, I thought I was going nutsos. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit so we can see what we're working with. I know there's a way for me to set this up so that every time I open a brand new document, it looks like this. I just haven't taken the time to make that correction, if you will. Yeah, we're gonna... Well, for the purpose of this particular document, we're actually not going to start there. Now we're going to delete this. Okay, and we are going to use this font. I think size 14 will do it. Yep, that looks about all right. Okay. Let me pop out my chat because I want to actually close this YouTube window. I don't want to have it open. It uses up a lot of RAM that I don't need to be using up. Oh, is something coming today? I need to remember to put a note out for FedEx to take this box they delivered to us weeks ago. That was delivered to the wrong address, and I'm not gonna go out of my way to take it to the right address. FedEx needs to take it to the right address themselves. This is being delivered today. Yeah, okay, sweet. So I need to put a note. Note. Okay, so while I am coming up with title ideas, I do have a Excel spreadsheet where I keep titles, where every time I come up with a title idea, I just write it down. So I am going to open that up and pull from that what I'm feeling right now are really good title ideas that I might want to utilize and run with. So me just open that document up. I never know where I save things. This is what happens when you have too many clouds. Too many clouds, and then you are like, okay, is it in my Google Drive cloud? Is it in, where would I put this? I will put it in productivity. I don't know why it's not open here, but that's all right. We'll open it now. Also, my own website isn't open here. We'll open that back again. I am currently using, and you can say testing out, the brand new operating system. I think it's called Monterey on my computer. So there are a few glitches I'm noticing as I'm using it. They're not terrible glitches because it's not, I'm not like freaking out too much, but okay, here we go. Let's see which titles I like. Hmm. So that's bad. So, all the stories that I've written or not completed, let me say, from years past, there was one that I thought I might be able to uh, rewrite um, and actually finish. My only concern is one, that I'm pulling something from the past and I'm not doing something new, and two, that I might not be able to do it within the word count required. But I really like this story. And also, I don't know if it's speculative fiction enough. It's sci-fi, um, and not just because it's in space, but the premise is, or basically the story, and I'm changing the title, so it's Mirror in Space with Astronauts, which is kind of like a play on Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Um, and that's basically the only thing. It has no real connection to that song whatsoever. But the premise is these two astronauts are going into space on a mission to drop this supercomputer on a newly discovered planet with the intention of leaving it there so that the supercomputer can determine if there is life, if it's inhabitable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is something set in the future, and so it's a normal thing that is done. To visit a planet and find out if it's inhabited or inhabitable. In any event, this particular computer um, suffered a slight glitch, and so she believe, and it's a she, Mira, Mira. She believes that she is sentient and exists and is real, and so what she does is she starts to um, play mind games on these two particular astronauts. She makes them believe that she was responsible for being chosen, and her intention is she's either going to get one to kill the other, or she's going to get them both and trick them into staying with her because she doesn't want to be alone. Whereas, humans by nature, being isolated and alone and apart from society can be very scary. And in her case, that is the same thing. She knows that they're planning to go there, leave her there, and then leave and return back to Earth, and she doesn't want that. And so the whole story is basically first her pitting one against the other. She discovers which one is the more dominant astronaut, which one is more malleable to manipulate, and then from there, they land on the planet, and a fight happens, or they crash on the planet or something like that. And I initially, when I wrote this, it was going to have multiple endings because I couldn't come up with how to end this, so I decided to almost make it like a choose your own ending type of thing, where the whole beginning, the whole 3/4 of it is the story, but then the end is one where you decide which path it goes. And I think I might have had 3 or 4 different possible endings where in one instance they end up killing each other and she's by herself anyway, so her plan fails. In another one, she ends up she realizes that she doesn't want the dominant one to be the one who's left with her because he really doesn't like her. He doesn't treat her like she's real. But what happens is he ends up, having or being forced to kill the weaker one. And so she's left with him, and she's devastated because she knows that she will end up being alone anyway, because he's going to try to figure out how to get back home. You know, in another instance, they don't fall for her trick, and she ends up getting left there, and being, you know, devastated. My favorite ending was the one where they both end up getting killed, and it ends almost in the same way that Gone with the Wind, the movie, ends, where she's kind of like, oh, well, you know, tomorrow is another day, and she just basically sends a mayday message back to Earth, and is just going to sit back and wait, where, because she knows that Earth is going to eventually send another pair of astronauts, and she hopes that this pair will be much nicer than the last pair. And I think if I were to write this, that would be the ending that I would go with, where they end up killing each other, and she's kind of like, well, the next pair will be better than this one. But again, I don't know if that's speculative fiction enough. I think it's a great story, but, and it's also not my usual type of writing, because it does take place in space, so I'm dealing with a spaceship, with, you know, gravity, with a supercomputer, with the whole thing about astronauts. I feel like that's a bit too much for me to take on and make sure that I get right in terms of all that goes into that, for a story that can't be more than 5,200 words. That might be a mistake. I feel like I should stick to my strong suit and try something new, but I do really want to write that one day. And I will, because I think I want to do an anthology. I've been seeing and reading up on, and about to purchase. I'm going to purchase the Ken Liu anthology, and I'm going to purchase the N.K. Jemisin Future Month anthology as well. Those two for sure. So I'm looking into how to do that in the best way, and I'm gonna do it through my Patreon probably. But in any event, we gotta pick a story here. I mean, I'm someone who likes not bad endings, but true to life type endings. And I do prefer fantasy. This is the one that I was actually thinking about last night while I was in bed, Stealing Shadows. And I was playing around with the idea of a world where of a world that casts no shadow, and anyone who does is an other, and because I'm thinking those who have shadow, they are able to, they have some sort of power or something, and so they have to hide. Um, and so there are places that can accommodate you in that they it's just, it's really complicated to figure out how to make something like that, because you have to now think of how do you cast a shadow, and it's usually by light. So if the world, for whatever reason, loses the sun, so it's blanketed in darkness and there is no more sun, what implications are there of that? Do they then replicate the sun by building these large dome like things that you now live in, that cast light in order to replicate day and night? And then thinking about, like I said, if you do actually still have a shadow, or is it just something that even in daylight there you cast no shadow, similar to like a vampire looking in a mirror casts no reflection? So it could be that. And if you have a shadow, those who have shadows are immortal maybe, or immune from disease. And so there are a certain type of people who have learned how to steal shadows. It's possible to take someone's shadow. How, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. That would be a part of the research. But then, who would the story center around? But I would only go that far if I decided to go with this one, and I think I am. It's just a matter of picking the right thing. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to say no to these. So I'm going to italicize them. They're out. This one is an almost definite yes. And I'm going to say these two are maybe. I hate that I can't just click the bold button here. I have to actually do that, but whatever, man. Okay, so with the two maybe titles, another idea that I had was, I'm currently writing a series that is going to be steeped in Native American culture and Native American folklore and things like that. And my trilogy, which may turn out to be 4 books, I don't know yet, is going to be centered around skinwalkers. And so I'm thinking with these two titles, either one, that I could pluck, if you will, one of the stories, because in my world and with this particular group of people that my story centers around, storytelling is very much a part of their culture. So much so that every night, the elder of this particular tribe tells a story. And so from the children to the adults, everyone gathers to hear a new tale. And every night she tells one. So, and very rarely does she repeat a story. And from her standpoint, the reason for that is because every day there is a story to tell. It's just a matter of finding the person who has that story and listening for it and retaining it and remembering it and then passing it on generations later. So for a tribe that has been in existence for many hundreds of years, yeah, there are many stories, both heroic and tragic. And, she has retained all of that over her lifetime. And now she, as the head elder, tells it. And so I'm thinking that either one of these tales would serve a purpose later, because this wouldn't be me basically like just taking a chapter from the book or anything like that. The idea is it's like an Aesop's fable situation where Aesop has like 200 fables. This would be one of the 1,000 stories that this particular elder is keeping. And if she were to print this, the um the folklore, the folklore of the Taikor tribe, this would be one amongst them. And in either case, it would be a story about an encounter with a skinwalker. Um, so I'm wondering if I want to take that route, basically, as a, and then I would, this story would either be mentioned or used or what have you in a later book that I end up writing, where she tells a truncated version of To Dance with Death, or There's Danger in These Woods, or something like that. And but in this case I would be writing the whole story, and embellishing or expanding it, because I don't want the tales that she tells to be as long as 2,800 or even 5,200 words. They would be closer to like 1,000, or at most maybe 2,000 words. So there's that to consider, and considerate I am. So something real quick. So I'm thinking, while that's a good idea, that maybe I shouldn't do that, and I should go with this one, with my instinct, and my gut instinct is to go with this and just find what title works the best. I mean, in the instance of the Shadow Thief, clearly then that kind of highlights who would be the one that would be the main character. It would be the person who's stealing, a particular person who's stealing who steals shadows. And is he, like a Oliver, where he's stealing shadows for a master that he's trying to get out of the thumb of, or she's trying to get out of from under their thumb? Or is this person never stolen a shadow before, they need to steal one because their mother, father, sister, brother is deathly ill, and the only way for them to survive is if they can get a shadow. Okay, so now let's get another sheet here that are of notes. So I'm gonna take this and paste it here. I don't know if I want to make them immortal. Uh, Yeah, maybe they just have like special powers or abilities, but um, I don't think I want to add the element of immortality because, well, what I'm thinking is it's their actual shadow that does it, so it's not them. So you know how when you cast a shadow, it casts, you know, on the ground and forward and away from you. So what I'm envisioning is what could that dark casted shadow entity do while both separated and connected to your body, um, so that that shadow moves even though you don't, so it can move things, right? So the shadow would be cast, let's say for instance, my shadow, depending on the way the light hits me, my shadow would be casted, let's say, onto my bottle of water, so that it can literally slide it towards me. So I don't have to lean forward and grab the bottle of water. My shadow could move things. It can move anything that it is casted upon, um, and move it towards me, or anyone who steps into my shadow, I can instantly kill them if they do that. Um, but what I'm thinking is a person doesn't have the ability to do all of these things. They can do one of these things. A super shadow holder would probably be able to do all of them, but not everyone who casts a shadow or who has their shadow can do all of these things. The only thing that is true of all people who have a shadow is that they are immune to illness and they are immortal. Um, what their special ability is basically determined once they get older and they start to actually um, play with their shadow, or you know, once they've lived in their shadow or with their shadow for a certain number of years, then what their ability is will present itself. And want there to be three things. So move, kill. What about create? Like create something in the shadow, like this. Like if the shadow is casted on uh, dirt or across stone or something like that, they can raise up a statue, or oh, I like that. Okay, so they can move, kill, or create. Those are the three things that a shadow. Those are the three abilities that someone who has a shadow can do. Um, and I think I might actually call them. They're called shadow casters because they cast a shadow, right? And there will be like certain bars and uh, hotels and areas that are shadow only, or shadow that are specific for shadow casters to go to, or non. um so if you have a shadow, then you know that you're welcome in these areas, and if you don't, then you know that you're welcome in these areas, or that you're not going to encounter someone with a shadow. So what I'm thinking is, because they're few and far between, do I want to make it something that they hide, um, or do I want to make it something where they are visible, they are present, they walk around the same as the rest of us? Um, it's just that people will occasionally like try to avoid them if they can, or something like that. So I've got to, and I've also got to think, when is this taking place? Um, in the way future, like something like what happens in the future that causes this anomaly where suddenly people are either do or don't have a shadow. Sorry, having some like nasal issues that I needed to take care of. Okay. So let's keep spitballing here. I'm just basically throwing things on the wall and seeing what sticks. Another name I'm thinking of is the Shade instead of the Shadowcasters. The Shade. We'll hold that. Okay, I think I need to employ a dictionary at this point. And this didn't work again. Oh, okay. My thing didn't auto tweet that I am on. I hate Zapier. I feel like it never works. So I am going to rely on Stream Elements to do it for me. The only thing that sucks about that is I'm gonna have to put the URL. Well, I could just put my channel URL as opposed to a URL directly to. I have to think on that. I kind of want the URL to direct right to the live feed rather than. I gotta figure out where I get that URL actually before I jump the gun here. I know it's here. Okay. Okay, so I'm actually going to tweet this myself since it didn't tweet out. And I will set for tomorrow what's coming tomorrow. Okay, so let's now get tomorrow's link. So I don't want to actually put the one I just put. I want to put tomorrow's. Well, not tomorrow's, but Friday's. So it just copied that link. And what did I call that one for Friday? Okay, so I just need to like give myself a reminder to come in here and just change the name and the link. And I'm gonna go into Zapier right now, which sucks, and turn this Zap off because it didn't work. And I can't afford for it to not work every time and for me to do it myself. Yeah, 3 errors. Why were there 3 errors? Oh, because it's picking up. Why is it picking up all that information? That's why it's not. Hold on, I have to edit. I think I figured out why it didn't work. Okay, so it was my fault, not the Zap's fault. But I don't know why it was tweeting all of that. Yeah, it's this part. So get rid of that, and that should fix it. Oops. What is that sound? I think someone's mowing the lawn. Whoa, sorry. Okay, so hold on. I'm fixing my Zapier issue, which I figured out what was going wrong. So I might turn off that Twitter thing on Stream Elements. So let me come into ergonomics. Am I gonna be able to do that? Let's turn this off and save. Okay. Okay, let's go back to my Zaps now, and let's go back to social media. Whoa, why did it retweet a really old one? I want to start thinking about a character now, because I've got multiple ways that I can go with this, especially when I added the fact that a shadow cat. Why does it keep putting it? That a shadow caster can be born of two non-shadow people, or that a non-shadow person can be born of two shadow casters. So it, just by that alone, I mean, I could easily have my main character be, someone who in fact can be free and roam around and not have that stigma of having a shadow because they don't have one. But the fact that they are born of two parents who do, makes them feel like they're not a part of that, like that, like they're a child. And so they decide that they're going to steal a shadow so that they can feel like they're a part of their family, because they're the only one, out of like the cousins and the uncles and the aunts and the grandparents that for whatever reason was born without a shadow. And so I'm thinking what happens is that she ends up stealing the wrong shadow. She steals a shadow from someone who can kill. Um, and now she has to contend with that, and the repercussions and consequences of having stolen a shadow, um, where that happens. And I think there should be some consequences that come when you lose your shadow, right? So if someone steals your shadow, what happens? So if you're essentially free from illness and immortal, then the process of the opposite speeds up. So let's say you're someone who steals the shadow of a person who in reality would have, if they didn't have a shadow, would get dementia or cancer or something like that. But because they have a shadow, that didn't happen to them. But then their shadow gets taken, and so it speeds that up, or maybe it speeds up the aging process. And so, they basically look like they're in their 40s, but in fact they're 240. So, their shadow gets taken and they basically disintegrate and turn to dust, and blow away in the wind. So, in the case of this girl who steals this shadow, um, that's the question I have to ask. Like, if it's taken from her, does she suffer what that person suffers because it's their shadow? Um, I've got to think on that too. Does the shadow take on now her form? Does it keep the form of the person that she took it from? Um, and I know I don't have to have the answer to all of these questions to tell this story, or I don't need to put all of these answers in the story, but I feel like I do need to have all the answers and know them, even though it's a short story and it will go no further than, the 4 or 5 thousand words with which I choose to put on the page. But I like where I'm going here. So my main character definitely, I think, is going to be, let's put notes for the main character. Whoops. thinking that the shade is actually going to be the name of their enemy, and not another name for them. Go create. Hello, Silent Willow. So I am taking another pause on my novel at the moment because, as you know, I'm working on. I love LeVar Burton. I love his podcast, and the fact that he is doing a uh, contest, um, that the winner will have their story read by him on their podcast is just like OMG. And I think I just discovered this like Monday. I don't even know if I discovered it Monday morning, so I probably didn't even mention it during that stream where unfortunately I had to leave early. I apologize for that, but my wife was deathly sick on Monday, and so as you know, as always happens to me, I try to plan something and then something happens and my plan falls apart. So it was actually around this time I think that I ended up ending that stream. Um, well, I grew up with LeVar Burton on Reading Rainbow, and then from Reading Rainbow to Star Trek, and now he is basically for my generation. She LeVar Burton decided that he was going to continue to read to me, which I think is just so amazing that he realized that the generation of the 80s and 90s that grew up with him reading children's stories to them on Reading Rainbow, that we are now older, but we miss him. And so he, decided that he was going to keep reading to us. And, he's not going to read children's book to us. So he reads adult fiction short stories. And I just I'm just so thankful to that, because it is something that a lot of us don't realize is very important and just instrumental in who we are as adults from children being read to us. And I remember some of the most fondest memories I have are of my mother reading to me out loud. She read children's books, and then she went on to read, teenager. My mom, actually, the last book she read to me was, I believe, either the second or third Harry Potter book. So that just tells you, I was a full grown teenager, like 16 or 17 years old, and I still wanted my mother to read to me, and she did. Like I said, and she would have continued to read to me had her eyes not started to fade. So she was unable to really do that anymore. But yeah, like, I just love being read to, and who doesn't? I mean, audiobooks, there's a reason why audiobooks exist, because we like, I love to read it, to sit and just read. But to be read to is just an amazing thing. And LeVar Burton is amazing at reading. He is an amazing storyteller. And I recommend his podcast to anyone who just wants to be read to. But in any event, he finally has, I have a link for, yes. So this link is actually specific to the writing contest itself, but it is within the, okay, it's supposed to do two things here. Why didn't it? There it goes. Okay. It's a little slow on the uptake. But if you go there, that's going to take you to the contest page. But if you just go to the LeVarBurtonPodcast.com, just remove the /contest, you will see all the links to either, Apple Podcast or what have you, in order to listen to his podcast. And the one that I recommend all the time, I was actually way off on the number. It's more closer to the 50s, like 59 or something like that, is Cuisine de Memoire, which is, he read a short story written by N.K. Jemisin. Amazing story. His reading it is amazing. He does voices and, all of these things. But any of them that you pick one, pick whatever, and listen to it. They are kind of lengthy, so they usually run between as short as like 30 minutes to as long as maybe an hour, depending on, it's short fiction, and short fiction could be a novella or a novelette, or just short in that it's like, 5,000 words, whatever. But yeah, I recommend it. So in any event, the contest opens August 1st, and it closes August 31st. So technically I have till August 31st to write a short story and submit it. It's free to enter. Unfortunately, it is US only, but I imagine that's because it's his, it's the first one he's doing. They're probably testing the waters to see how many people are actually going to submit, and etc. So that's probably why it's US only for the first year. But I would imagine when it gets, it's going to be so popular that they are going to expand it to include other country. So the grand prize, there's a cash prize, but to me, the grand prize, the number one prize, that is the reason why you'd want to enter this contest, is that he reads your story and it becomes a part of his podcast. Which is like, are you kidding me right now? That is what I want. As you know, the reason why I even did Friday Fiction to begin with was because my idea was I was going to produce 52 stories, and I was going to submit those to publications, specifically the publications that I knew he was reading, because I knew that if I got my story published in the digital magazines or the anthologies or what have you that he was reading, that he would see it with, the crazy notion that he would see it, love it, and then, ask permission and read it on his podcast. This is another entry, and this is an entry for people who, it's very difficult to get into a publication. So it's just an amazing way now, another way for me to get in without having to, jump the hurdle of getting published in a publication, etc. But yeah, the grand prize is $500 for, I think, first place, $250 for second place, and like $100 for third place, I think. But really, the prize is not I could care less about the $500 or whatever. The grand prize to me is that the person who gets first place, their story will be read by LeVar Burton, and it will be a part of his podcast, and that will be amazing because he's considered a national treasure. So to have him read your work on his podcast, I can't think of a better prize than that. I mean, they don't even really need to have the cash prize, but I'm sure they're having it because it's similar to if I was to submit this to a publication and they would pick it to publish it. That's basically how much I would get for it. So that's probably why they're doing the cash prize, because it would be of a similar thing. But I mean, please, I'll take that money and buy a million books with it. Most likely. But yeah, so uber excited. So I just came up with, I was just spitballing ideas. So I was over here, me, I always start with a title. So I finally, I went through a couple of titles, was, kind of talking it out with myself to figure out which one I wanted to go with. I finally went with this. I don't have the exact title yet. As you can see here, I came up with a couple of other ones, but I do have the basic premise of it. It's speculative fiction with a sort of a it's more like a fantasy spec fic story, and the idea is that in the future, many thousands of years in the future, like let's say the year 4000, whatever, something happens where humanity loses their shadow, but there are some who end up keeping their shadow. And as a result of that, what happens is people who have a shadow, for whatever reason, they don't get sick, and they are immortal. So anyone who has a shadow, those two things are true of that individual. Then something else began to happen over the span of time with this cataclysmic event that happened that caused people to lose their shadow and some people to keep them. They found that people who kept their shadow and had them, aside from being immortal and from free from illness, they would have one of three special abilities. And these special abilities are specific to the shadow. So the actual shadow is the one who is able to do and perform these things. And the three things are to either move objects, kill a person or animal that steps onto the shadow, or create something. So if the shadow is cast on dirt or clay or anything that the shadow is basically cast on that is basically like an inanimate object or whatever, it can create a chair or something. It can create something that is then usable, almost like think of it like a 3D printer. So you feed it the materials and it builds something out of the materials that you place upon the casted shadow. And so they are called shadow casters because they cast a shadow. And so one of the things that I thought of is it's really very random as to who gets a shadow and who doesn't at birth. So a shadow caster, someone who is born with a shadow, can be born with a shadow by two non-shadow people. So two people who don't have a shadow can produce a child that ends up being born with a shadow. And the same can be true in the opposite way, that a non-shadow person can be born of two people who have a shadow. Why that is, science, government, they have not been able to determine how a person is born with or without a shadow, what it is about their digital makeup, their genes that causes this to happen. And so my story, the story that I am going to tell from the character's point of view, I am going to do first person, is a girl is born without a shadow from a long line of family that do. And why she was born without a shadow, no one knows. But her grandparents, her great grandparents, her parents, her cousins, her aunts and uncles, they all have a shadow. She was born without one. So we're stepping into her life as a teenager. So she has lived, these 17, 18, 20, whatever years. And while she can walk freely among society, because if you have a shadow, you can walk freely among society, but you are usually, people will keep their distance. There are those who believe that everyone has the ability to kill, that it's not specific like that. So you might not be able to enter certain shops or certain stores. There are certain places that will have a symbol on it that will say, shadows not welcome here, that sort of thing. So while she should feel, free because she doesn't have a shadow. So unless someone knows that her parents are parents who have shadows, she can just, walk into any shop she wants, walk around freely and, not have that stigma on her. However, that's not true. She actually feels very ostracized, and she doesn't feel like she's a part of the family because she doesn't have a shadow and they all do. And so at a moment of desperation, she wants a shadow, and so she decides to steal one. That is a thing. That is something that happens. People will attempt to steal someone else's shadow just because they might be very sick. And so out of desperation, they want to steal someone's shadow because they know if you have a shadow that you don't get sick, that you are immortal. So they're, out of greediness. So it is possible to steal a person's shadow. There are consequences to that on the person who has their shadow stolen because they have reverse side effects that take place. So they might end up dying instantly if they look like they're 40 but they're actually 200. So when their shadow is stolen, the speed of aging takes place and they disintegrate and turn to ash and dust and blow away in the wind. Or if they're not that old, they're 40 and they really are 40 in true life. But if they didn't have a shadow, they would, have cancer or some sort of disease that is, being halted or stunted because they have a shadow. When their shadow is taken, again, that natural process of their life will take place. They will get sick, they will die. So there are consequences to the person with the shadow if it's stolen. There is a group of people that have formed over the years called the Shade, who their mission is to capture and destroy those with a shadow. They don't want to capture and take the shadow for themselves. They actually want to destroy them. They don't want people to have a shadow. Right, it's some sort of protective device that can be taken, but it literally is an actual shadow. So you can see if a person has a shadow, right? Because you see it casted from sunlight. And so what happens is there is so my story is going to take place at this event. There's a party that happens every year. It moves around because of the Shade. They can't have the party at the same place every year, but every year on a specific day, at night, anyone who has a shadow, all shadow casters gather just to kind of get to know each other, know who's new into the fold, who was newly born in the last year with a shadow. So this event happens, this large gathering of shadow casters, and it is at this gathering that this girl, my main character, with the aid of her cousin, who gives her the idea to steal a shadow, and offers to help her do so because he learned how, or he found out how from, a group of terrible people, to go steal a shadow. But what happens is she steals the wrong one. And by the wrong one, I mean that she ends up stealing the shadow of a person who has the ability to kill. And she didn't consider that when she was in her desperation to steal a shadow so that she can feel like she's a part of her family. And so there will be consequences that come from her stealing that particular shadow, because now she realizes, or she will realize at the end of the story, that she can't just go out anymore like she used to when she was a teenager and a kid and running around. The friends that she had will now no longer want to be her friend. And there will be other consequences, as you can imagine, where she doesn't know how to control the shadow because she didn't live with it the way people who are born with it. You live with your shadow. So in living with it for all those years, you learn how to control whatever it is that ability is when it presents itself. So in her case, she's got a shadow that kills and she can't control it. So she ends up killing innocent people, a friend or a relative that she didn't intend to do. And now what is she going to do? You know what I mean? If she get it, and she can't give it away, she can't kill it herself, she's got to now live with it, and she's got to live with the choice that she made. Was it the right choice? Who knows? But that is going to be the story that I'm going to tell, which is of this girl who feels, this desperate need to feel connected to her family. So she steals a shadow, and then the consequences that come from that, which is why initially I was calling it Stealing Shadows. But I don't know if I like that one. The Shadow Thief kind of makes it feel like this is something she does for a living, which it isn't. So I don't know if I don't really like this one. So I'm going to actually italicize it so I can let myself know I don't like it. I think the same thing is true for A Thief of Shadows. So it's either going to be... I feel like How to Steal a Shadow makes it seem a bit hokey. It doesn't give it the sense of seriousness that it deserves. Yeah, my only issue, like I said, with A Thief of Shadows is that it makes it seem like stealing shadows is something that she does regularly, you know. And it's not. She is stealing one shadow with one purpose for herself, and that is it. She's not going to be she's not in the business of stealing shadows. So I don't know. I still had, it's going to involve the word shadow and some sort of form of stealing said shadow. I just need to think more on that, but the story is definitely there. It is going to take place in the future, so that helps me out a bit. I do need to locate it somewhere. I want to locate it. I'm also a bit torn about the fact that I'm using shadows plural, and that's why I liked the Shadow Thief, because it's one. It's signifying that it's one shadow as opposed to multiple shadows. But that's just me being nitpicky. But in any event, so I need to place this somewhere in a populous area. And then I need to set it in a specific time. And I need to choose a POV, because I kind of want to do first person POV that is from her point of view. And in this instance, it technically can be. It's a short story, which is great. So I won't feel crazy about the fact that, oh my God, I'm putting this in a big world, right? So let me quickly just list out who the other characters are, so that I know I'm keeping this cast. It needs to be a very small cast. So firstly, we're gonna have her cousin. Second, we're going to have her parents, mother and father, who are well known in the shadow caster. Sorry, community. Let's see. She's got to have friends, or at least one friend who is a non-shadow person. And this is a friend who has no idea that her parents are shadowcasters. She's managed to keep that from her friends, plural, and her parents are the ones who made sure that she was aware she needed to do that. So it's not like her parents are like, "Oh, are you embarrassed by us?" No. It was at their suggestion because she is going to a non-shadow school that and they made sure that she went to all the schooling that she went to was at a non-shadow school, and the way there's a way in which they would go about doing that where the schools and the government basically don't want children who are born of shadowcasters to feel to be treated as if they have a shadow just because of the unfortunate consequence of them having parents with shadows. So what will happen is when you're in at the hospital that you're born in, they put you in connection with a sort of like a social worker type of thing, and that social worker will then connect with all of the schools and all of these things to inform them at times of, like, you know, parent teacher conferences and things like that. This child will not be present for that, and they don't treat them any differently. They don't let it known to the other students that this particular child is shadowless, but their parents are shadowcasters. Like they really, the government really does go above and beyond to make sure that they don't have this kind of stigma, as long as the parents agree that they will not present themselves at, you know, social school functions and things like that. So if the parents keep their distance, then the school and the government will do their part to make sure that this child, you know, fits right in. And she did. She, you know, she's very popular. She has many friends. She's got a I'm gonna actually make this a best friend, so that way it's, you know, she's got other friends, but this is a best friend. And I will... Non-shadow girl. Okay, so we've got a cousin. We're going to have a best friend. Oh, we've got to have the person that she steals the shadow from. So there's going to be a female shadow caster. And the only reason why I'm even listing this person is because they will have like maybe one or two lines. And that's about it before they basically turn to dust and die. But they will end up saying something. And I think that's it. I don't think there is anyone else that I really need to put in the story besides that. I think I might want to put in, I was thinking of putting in like an uncle or something of hers who also has a shadow, but really the way this is going to play out is almost like Cinderella, where she can't go to the ball because she is shadowless. So this happens every year where she stays behind while all of her family, all of her immediate family are gathered at their house, and they're getting ready. They're putting on their suit and tie and tucks and tails and dresses and jewels and all of these things, and they're getting ready to go to this gala event, and she is staying behind. But in this instance, her cousin says that he's going to stay behind with her this year, and really the reason why he's doing that is because his intention is to take him with her and help her sneak in to the event, because she's not going to be able to walk in through the front door. She has no shadow. They will not let her in. In fact, they may think that she's a shade who and they might think that they've been infiltrated, and it would cause all sorts of alarm bells and things like that. But in any event, so the cousin stays behind while this is how the story is, I think, is going to open, with this moment where the cousin stays behind, and she's like, you know, what are you staying behind for? And he tells her, he's got an idea, and you know, he opens up this kit type of thing, which is like filled with the implements or whatever, the notes or whatnot that he needs or they need in order to steal a shadow for her. And he says, you know, this event is going to have hundreds, if not thousands of people present, all with a shadow. All we have to do is pick one, right? And so they go to the event, they pick one. She steals the shadow caster dies. And immediately what happens, well, I won't even say it, but but I already know what's going to happen next. And then she ends up, you know, running away. And she stupidly doesn't realize that she's running through the streets with a shadow at night. And every time she hits a street light or whatever, you know, her shadow is casted. And so people who are out walking, you know, leisurely or whatever, they see it and they, you know, wonder why she's running frantically, whatever the case may be. And what do you do when you're terrified and scared? You know, she just left the party, so she's not running home to her parents. She knows that they're there, so she runs to her best friend, right? I mean, that's who you run to. And then, boom, another, you know, climactic scene happens when that happens. And then she leaves, you know, her best friend, and she goes home and she's terrified. And her parents come back from the party, you know, and they're talking. She hears them downstairs talking about how, you know, that someone's shadow was stolen, and so they had to, you know, end the party early, and they can't believe that the shades found them. And you know, they're looking out the window to make sure that they weren't followed home, just in case. And the mother goes to find her daughter upstairs and make sure that she's okay. And when she does, she sees that her daughter has a shadow. And then, you know, the story continues from there. So I've got to figure out an ending, but that's the crux of it. And I think that will easily be told in the word count cap of this contest, which is at least 2,800 words and no more than 5,200 words. So I think I might be able to do that in that time. So I'm actually going to start wrapping up my live stream now, and with the intention that on Friday, I want to spend the first hour coming up with actual names for my main character and my other characters. So I want to give them names. And it's very important for her name and her parents and her cousin, because it's a long line. So I want their name to really feel like awesome, like an awesome last name anyway. And I want to also put in some of the technology and pick a location, a name of this city that they live in. So I want to have that kind of fleshed out in the first hour. And then in the second, I want to start work on the actual outline. So I want to kind of finish up my research on Friday in the first half, and then start work on my outline, because I want to give myself part of Friday and all of the 3 streams next week to just focus on getting the outline solid and done and perfect, because after next week is when I want to start actually writing the story and getting that down. So because I don't want to submit this on like the absolute ultimate last day. I want to try to get this submitted by mid-August, if not by like the third week of August. I don't want to wait till like August 31st and I'm still trying to get this story done. That's not what I'm trying to do. So yeah, so the 19th is when I want to start actually writing this thing, and I want to, give myself those 2 weeks to write it, so that by July 30th, I will hopefully have the entire story zero or vomit drafted. Like the vomit draft will be done by the end of July, which will then give me the first and second week of August to really get down with editing, re-editing, editing again, editing some more, rereading it, reading it over and over and over and over again till my eyes bleed, but getting all of that taken care of so that hopefully by the week of the 16th or the 23rd, it's submitted. It's not what I plan on making it. It's going to be within the confines of the word count, right? So I'm gonna try to make it somewhere around 4,000 words. But the word count cap is 5,200. So if I make it 5,000 words, then it's not a big deal. It's still gonna be acceptable. So I'm gonna say 5,000. For the vomit draft, and then see what happens in the editing process. Try to edit it down. If it's 4,000 words, I might try, when the editing process happens, I might try to make it a bit meatier. But if I do the vomit draft and it's around 5,000 words, then my editing will be, I will intend to shorten it. So that's what's going to happen. Something else is I'm going to be starting to read, going back to reading for real. And I have to pick what I'm going to be reading. It's going to be one of so far 2 books that I have next to me. I was thinking of doing Nolan, and I can actually do, no, sorry, I meant to do this. Oh, but I'm not on the right camera, of course. Here we go. Sorry. So I was gonna do the Michael Sullivan book because this is book 1. So it's not like I would be, this is the Kickstarter. I told you I support Michael J. Sullivan. He does Kickstarters. The last like 3 or 4 books he did as another series, and now he's starting a new trilogy. But I'm likely not, like I said, I'm probably not going to do this one. Instead, it's likely going to come down to either Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. I'm leaning towards this one heavily, or R.L. Stein's Fear Street, which I'm going to start watching the series. It's a 3-part series, which I think is going to continue. And I bought this, which is the first 4 books. This was a series that he wrote back. What do you mean do? I didn't hear you. What do you mean do? Like, you mean by like how long I intend to plan on making the story? Oh, you mean like with supporting the Kickstarter, that that's something I do? Like read it. Like do this book, like read it. No. Not read it on stream, just read it in general. Like I need to go back to reading. Because I haven't been reading in a long time. So something I plan on doing that I'm going to do is read this book. No, I can't read it on stream. I don't have the permission to do so. These aren't public domain. These are written by, I can't read them on stream, but I do plan on reading them to myself out loud. And I'm excited about it because I'm going to go back to doing book reviews, which I never really did in the past, but I'm going to do now. I'm going to review books and leave all these things. But yeah, so, and both of these actually came because I watched the R.L. Stine masterclass. So that's where the R.L. Stine comes in, because he talked about what it was about. And when he mentioned what it was actually about, I couldn't believe that I never read them. because it's a brilliant story concept, and he's written, I don't know, 50 or 60 Fair Street novels. And they were, granted, they were written, I think, in the 70s or 80s, so I would have been too young, but that's why I read Goosebumps by R.L. Stine and not Fair Street, because it wasn't in my it wasn't in, my age range. So, and by the time I was old enough to read Fair Street, I felt again that it was a very hokey story, and I was just like, I don't want to read about teens, and like that just wasn't my thing, at least because that's what I thought it was. But it turns out I was very wrong. So and Netflix just came out with the Fair Street series, which they're releasing every week. So yeah, so that's there. But like I said, he mentioned, if I want to learn how to write creepy, is it? No, if I want to learn how to write thriller, to read this. If I want to learn how to write creepy, to read Stephen King. But yeah, so everyone has talked about Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. So I think this is going to be the one that I'm going to start reading in the next coming week or so, and hopefully get through it very quickly and review it, and so on. So with that said, thank you all for being here. I will be back on Friday for another 2-hour stream. Thank you, Silent Willow, for being here. I took note of the titles you were giving me. Hopefully by Friday that will be something else that I will solidify is the title of this short story, as well as all the other aspects of name conventions and locations and time periods and things like that, so that I can get to the actual outlining for all of next week, so that I can really start work on writing this. There are a bunch of other people who I'm trying to pull in, if you're from the US, to participate in this writing contest. So I'm hoping if you watch this on the replay that you will go to the link, which will be in the description below, and that you will work on writing a short story and submitting it, because you never know. LeVar Burton could end up reading your short story as a part of his podcast. And we don't know how many times he's going to do this a year. He's doing this very quickly. When it closes August 31st, he intends on announcing the winner October 15th, which is literally 6 weeks later. So I don't know if that means he's maybe going to try to do this twice a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. And if that's the case, I mean, that's multiple times that he's giving the opportunity to a nobody like me, or like any of us, to kind of circumvent needing to try to get into the publisher or the publication first, hoping he sees it and hoping he chooses it. In this case, he is choosing it himself, something fresh and new that no one else has seen, which is, like I said, pretty cool. So let's give him a lot of material, to a lot of entries, because I'm sure the more entries we give him, the more he'll realize he should do this multiple times a year, and that he should expand it beyond just the US and to other countries. And the only way to do that is if he gets hundreds, if not 1,000 submissions on his first entryway into having this writing contest. Free to enter. Just remember that it's free to enter, which is also pretty awesome. So with that said, I will see you guys Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern time, and we will continue work on my short story, and hopefully you will continue work on yours. Until then,